Around 10 years ago, on a winter afternoon, my girlfriend and I were out exploring. We used to be into graffiti, always seeking out interesting locations to throw up some paint. But as the years went by, the thrill of exploration overshadowed the graffiti aspect. We'd noticed an abandoned school hidden in the outskirts of town, a relic from World War II that had originally been a convent dating back to the early 1800s, and we decided to make the hour-long drive into the country to check it out. The wind howled as we parked at the bottom of a long, overgrown driveway that descended into the woods. After a short walk, we came to a clearing and gasped as we saw the convent standing there in silence, as if it was watching us emerge from the woods. The old stone building was peppered with religious symbols and Latin phrases engraved within the masonry, a historical treasure trove that had sadly just been left to ruin. We climbed in through a broken window into the building's chapel. The air was freezing, and the huge echoing room was hauntingly quiet. Hymn books lay scattered on the floor, and a wooden cross on the wall hung upside down. I couldn't resist taking a photo of my girlfriend, doing the obligatory heavy metal devil horns next to the cross. Creaking open the only door leading to the main corridor of the convent, we found ourselves in a vast, towering space with high ceilings. Every tiny sound echoed, and the darkness was palpable. Most of the windows were covered by overgrowth outside, casting the rooms into gloom. We explored the old classrooms, filled with dust, dried leaves, and occasional scattered schoolbooks. The wind outside rattled the few remaining windows, and the atmosphere became increasingly unsettling. We headed up the stone stairs to the second floor, where religious pictures adorned the walls and worn, broken statues stood as silent witnesses to the passage of time. As we heard a door creaking, we initially figured it was the wind blowing in through the broken windows, yet something in the air had shifted. Walking at a snail's pace down the hallway, we had stopped talking to each other, as if we were both trying to hear something in the echoing silence. I turned to my partner. "Let's bail. This doesn't feel right," I said to her quietly. She grabbed my wrist without replying, and we turned to walk back to the stairs. As we neared the staircase, my girlfriend suddenly pulled at my arm, coming to a sudden stop. She stared into the dark corner of the hallway, her grip on my arm tightening. I strained my eyes to peer into the shadows, trying to notice what she had seen. As my eyes adjusted, I could barely make out the outline of a figure standing motionless in the corner. It looked to me like the frame of an older woman, very slight and too dark to make out any features, but definitely facing us, staring right back. Frozen in place, we stared for what felt like an eternity. We needed to get past to get down the stairs, but we were both paralyzed on the spot. Suddenly my girlfriend turned to me and whispered, "Is it a statue?" A wave of relief came over me as we looked at each other and exhaled loudly. It was the only rational explanation. Gripping each other's hand, we ran past the shadowy statue and fled to the stairs, our footsteps and heavy breathing echoing down the staircase. As we ran down, I felt my girlfriend tug at my sleeve as she shouted, "Look!" pointing up to where we had just run from. The statue, that had been apparently staring us down in the upstairs hallway, looked like it had shifted the angle it was facing, and was now facing us, looking down as we made our escape. "Is it a statue?" I asked. We stared back for a split second, mouths wide open in disbelief, looking for any detail that could confirm one way or the other if we were being watched or just letting our imaginations fall victim to the intense atmosphere of the convent. The curiosity was quickly overtaken with fear as we bolted down the rest of the stairs, ran towards our entry point at the chapel, and climbed out the window, gasping for breath. Outside, We heard the creak again, followed by a door slamming shut, resonating through the entire building. We ran down the dark driveway, the wind now a haunting symphony. In the safety of our car, we caught our breath before driving home, trying to rationalize the experience on our way. Reflecting on that day creeps me out, maybe more than it did at the time. If my girlfriend hadn't noticed the silent observer in the dark corner to start with, we might have never known there was something, or someone there, just watching over us the entire time. Although we still go exploring, that strange encounter remains our only truly scary experience, and the curiosity hasn't tempted us to go back. There was an old derelict factory a couple of miles away from my college campus that my college friends Jason and Kate had spotted on Google Maps, and one weekend, our plan was to explore the vacant caverns of this forgotten place. The late afternoon sun bathed the factory in a melting golden glow as we approached. Our steps echoed through the remains of what was once a bustling facility. As we entered, the air was thick with the scent of dampness and decay. Graffiti covered the walls, vibrant against the backdrop of industrial ruin. "Enter if you... ... taunted one ominous message sprayed across a massive steel door. We exchanged glances, the rush sparking excitement in our eyes. We ventured deeper, every noise echoing in the vast emptiness. The place was a maze of rusty machinery and discarded parts. Our laughter resonated, bouncing off the cavernous walls as we discovered dusty corners and hidden rooms. Kate, daring as ever, suggested we climb a rickety staircase to reach the upper levels. The wooden steps groaned under our weight, and each ascent felt like a test of our courage. When we finally reached the top, the view was amazing. The factory floor lay below us, a patchwork of shadows and low light. We spent hours exploring, fueled by the adrenaline of trespassing in a place apparently forgotten by time. We smoked a couple of joints, the pungent aroma mingling with the musty air, which only added to the buzz and disorientation in our surroundings. As the sun began its descent, we began to head back down to the lower floors. The air grew colder and darker as we descended the creaking stairs. Suddenly, we all turned towards a window, as the sound of a car door closing echoed from outside. We froze and inched towards the window to try and get a glimpse of who it could be. A man was peering around the building with a flashlight. He aimed the beam of his torch at the window we were at as we ducked down, panic well and truly setting in. As we stared at each other, scrambling to think of our next move, one of the doors downstairs slammed shut, the echo muffling our gasps. Confused and worried, we huddled in the corner of the staircase, most likely hindered in our decision-making from being half-baked. Suddenly, the man's voice rang out through the factory, announcing himself as the police. A cool wave of relief hit me for a split second, until Jason's sharp intuition interrupted. "Wait," he whispered, hurriedly adding that he had a bad feeling and wasn't sure if the guy was really a cop. We remained frozen, grappling with the growing tension, when our corner was suddenly illuminated. The man's flashlight beam landed on us, and he barked at us to come out. We stared at each other, the man standing ominously at the bottom of the stairs, and the gravity of the situation sinking in. The man shouted again, more aggressively this time, "Come down, now!" We descended the stairs slowly, eyeing the man up and down. He definitely didn't look like a police, even an undercover one. "Are you here alone? Where's your IDs?" the man demanded. It felt like we were in slow motion for a moment as we paused, with Jason chiming in to break the choking silence. "Where's your badge, pal?" Jason asked confidently. "We don't have to show you anything." The man's frustration clearly began to boil. As I looked around, to see Jason shine his flashlight directly into the man's face. Blinded and clearly taken off guard, the man raised his arm to cover his eyes, and with an unexpected forceful push to his chest by Jason, he crashed to the ground. At the time, I couldn't believe what Jason was doing, still thinking there was a chance that the man could have been a legit police officer. But seizing the opportunity, we took off running, the man yelling, but seemingly unwilling or unable to give chase. As we reached the exit, we saw his car, an old battered Honda, no police markings. I snapped a quick photo and we fled the factory, adrenaline pumping. When we got home, I contacted the police, providing a detailed description of the man and his car, but to my surprise, instead of a straightforward report, I found myself facing more questions about our activities in the factory that night. I don't think they took it very seriously, as if we should have accepted the risk of poking around derelict buildings, which I can sort of understand in a way, but I have a strong feeling, had it not been for the three of us being there, and for Jason's confidence, the outcome could have easily been very different and something to take very seriously. This happened a few years back, in my early teens. My friends and I were hanging out on a summer afternoon, a couple of miles away from our small town. The setting was idyllic, a calm river with a rope swing and the distant hum of music playing from a portable speaker. We would hang out here for hours on sunny days, some amazing memories, but not all of them so perfect. As the sun dipped towards the horizon, casting a warm light over the river, the conversation among us turned to the old farmhouse sitting in the near distance. It had been abandoned for as long as we could remember, a bit of a wreck, surrounded by fields that made it look even more desolate and creepy. I can't remember if we were feeling brave or just bored that day, but we all decided for some reason that we should most definitely take a look. The walk to the farmhouse was a mix of excitement and trepidation. We approached the old wooden door, and with a boldness fueled by teenage bravado, one of us knocked loudly. The only response was the echoing silence of the summer evening. Undeterred, we entered the house and found ourselves in a large kitchen, mostly empty except for a worn wooden table. Shouts of "Hello" went unanswered in the abandoned dwelling. Brazenly, we moved further into the house, exploring its many rooms. The darkness inside seemed to amplify the eeriness until I could feel it in my belly. As we all piled up the creaking stairs, we walked through a small room with its doors open and into a big open room that overlooked the fields and the river outside. The view was stunning with the fading sunlight, and we all just stood and stared in silence for a few minutes, as if we had just forgotten where we were. Suddenly, we heard a faint click, like the soft closing of a door catch. We turned around in unison to find the door we had entered through was now closed. There didn't seem to be a draft, and it hadn't slammed shut. It was like it had been closed with deliberate quietness. Confused, but not yet alarmed, we opened the door and looked through the room. To our surprise, the door at the other end was also closed. A nervous tension began to seep into the air as we exchanged confused looks. The buzz of our expedition had shifted, and a sense of being penned in began to settle upon us. We briskly walked back through the door and headed down the stairs to find the kitchen door now closed as well. I reached out and slowly pushed the door open, peering inside in anticipation. There was nobody to be seen, and we piled through, laughing and cheering as we bumped into the kitchen table. In a split second, the laughter and commotion stopped dead as our eyes all fixed on the same spot and synchronized panic took over. On the once empty kitchen table, there was now an axe and an old metal bucket. "Fuck this," one of my friends shouted as we collectively made a run for the door. The rush to escape was chaotic, and in our haste, we knocked the table and its menacing contents over. As we burst out of the farmhouse and sprinted through the field, I forced myself to glance back and was sure I could see the outline of a man standing at the front door, silently watching us as we ran through the field. I shouted at my friends to look back, but there was so much noise with everyone shouting and swearing that I don't think anyone heard me. Back at home, I recounted the bizarre encounter to my dad, expecting him to share our bewilderment. However, his response was stern, a lecture about the perils of entering unknown places, and a scolding about how I should have known better. We never went near that farmhouse again, but it's still there today, its menacing aura growing with each passing year. I still think about that summer afternoon and the farmhouse a lot, a reminder to myself that some places are better left undisturbed.